This Friday night, we're trying something new with the Empire's Lounge. It's an after-hours comedy show. We're here with JoJo to tell you more about it. All right, so we got JoJo down here, a local comedian who is putting on a comedy show here at Empires. I know it sounds strange. It's the first after-hours event we've done in our lounge, and hopefully the beginning of many more. It's going to be this Friday, the 31st, starting at 8 p.m. No cover. We do ask you to, be a little generous with the comedians. There'll be some tip jars up there, but just come down, relax, and have some fun. So it's good to have you on, JoJo.
It's good to be here. I'm very glad to come here. I'm very excited to do a show here.
Now, have you ever done comedy in a comic book store?
I've done comedy in a lot of weird places. So not a comic book shop. I've done comedy in a store that sold a lot of magic cards and gaming stuff.
How was that crowd? Were they receptive?
Fantastic.
Well, they were? Okay.
One of the best shows I've ever had. Actually.
Okay. But you interrupted their magic game.
I did interrupt their magic game. Yes, they were like, we have to clear out for what now? People talking? We don't want to see social interaction. But it was fine. They hung out. They realized, we fed them pizza. They had a good time.
See, that was the hook. You fed them pizza, and then they realized that social interaction is important.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Hey, I'm a gamer. I can make fun of this. So what was it? Because you came to me.
Yes.
And said, hey, I have an idea. Let's see if we can make this work.
Yeah.
What was it that made you think that something like this would work here?
Well, I'm of a generation of comics where we are trying to get away from clubs. We're trying to get away from really structured theaters. We want to try to bring comedy to regular people who don't just see it as, we can just go on Friday night like once a year. We wanted to make a community-focused event. And I really like coming here. Like, I set aside time every week to come here to pick up my weeklies and also just to, like, look at stuff. It's fun. And I know that, like, it's a good hangout spot. Got a lounge area. It all kind of just made sense. Like, I love comedy. I love coming to this comic book shop. It'll just make sense if we can do a show here.
Well, I'm glad you did, because I really like the idea. Me and Ron had talked about doing fun stuff like this, but I don't think comedy had ever been on the board. So
Never does.
So
Never
does. You don't really think about it. Well, there's the thing too. You just mentioned a moment ago that you are of a generation of comics that wants to take comedy away from, like, not take it away, but it's not just for that Friday night once a month. Where does that come from?
That comes from we live in a more connected society. Mm-hmm. It's a lot like if you want to get entertainment, it's really easy to get it. So nowadays most people don't make livings doing comedy. They make livings doing other things, videos on YouTube, podcasts, things like that.
Okay.
With that in mind, it makes sense. Like, well, if we want to do a comedy show to get people to have a good time, we can't charge $20. We can't make it this huge thing. We got to make it something casual, something fun, something that people would really want to get behind and want to support.
Okay.
This is our comedy show. It's in a spot that we enjoy, and it's something that we just want to. We're trying to make it something can be different, and we're trying to create a space for comics to experiment and be as funny as they possibly can without any restrictions of, like, if I don't do well, I'm not going to be asked to come back here.
Okay, and that's fair enough. And you said too that, like, if people are looking, they can find places to see comedians like you around town. I mean, like, daily.
Every night of the week, you can catch a show with really great local talent.
And how do they find out? Is there like a one place they can go to?
There is a website called saccommedyscene.com. It's run by a local guy named Brandon Lee, and he lists pretty much every open mic, every book show in the Sacramento area. And you can go to any one of those shows and you'll have a fantastic time. It'll be very funny.
Okay, so no, that's great. And then you probably at something like that, you just don't know who's going to show up.
Absolutely.
So that would be kind of half the fun.
Yeah.
To see what you get on any given night.
Yeah, definitely.
And we've gotten a good response from the people who have looked at what we're doing this time. Mm-hmm. So I think we should have a pretty good showing here, which is going to be really fun.
I'm extremely excited.
Now, since we've never done anything like this before, what can we expect on a night like that? We're starting at 8. How long does each person go on? What kind of comedy are we doing?
These
are all questions I should have asked long before now, by the way.
Basically, like, what's the show going to be?
Yeah.
It's basically going to be a standard what would we call a comedy showcase. We have a handful of really good local comedians. They all have different styles.
Okay.
Some are very jokey. Some are very cerebral. Some of them like to tell stories, things like that. They're each going to do about 15 minutes, 12 to 15 minutes of their material, just one after another. And I'll be hosting it. I'll do some jokes up front, but my whole job during the show is just to bring up everybody and keep everything really high energy, exciting,
very
happy.
cool.
Yeah.
That'll be fun. And we have 5 total, or 4 total, I guess, since you're just hosting.
Yes.
So, and who all are we bringing down?
We're bringing down Kim Martell. She's a local comic. She started about the same time I did. She's from Woodland.
Okay.
And she's absolutely hilarious. Way more gross than you would imagine, just based on her picture.
Okay, all
She's
right.
one of my favorites. The one with the hair, whose name is misspelled on the flyer for some reason, that's John Gamora. He's a really good friend of mine, and he does a very interesting kind of absurd, like meta style of comedy where you're not sure if he's actually paying attention to what's happening in the room, but it's really funny.
Okay, that's interesting. That'll be fun.
There's my buddy Luke Soin, who runs a YouTube channel called Epic Tiki, and he does a lot of like really solid jokes. He likes to focus on nerd stuff and comics and things. He's a really cool guy.
Okay.
And the last comic is Emma Haney, who is another local comedian. She's hilarious. She's like a pro. She's hilarious.
Let's talk a little bit about you.
Okay.
So you're obviously a comic book fan.
Yeah,
You're
Mhm.
a comic and a comic fan.
Mhm.
What got you going into comedy?
Into comedy. Well, I was a grad student at SUNY Binghamton in upstate New York, and I got to a point where I realized that it's like everything I'm doing I don't really like. I can't really connect with people in any way that I felt was meaningful. I didn't feel like I had anything to like contribute to culture, society as a whole. And then one day I had to do this really weird project where they were like, find some type of thing about the way language works, and then we'll teach it to the class.
Okay.
And I didn't study that. I didn't care about it. But I did care about comedy when I was a kid, so I found this old clip, an old George Carlin clip of him talking about the way that language progresses through the ages, how the word shell shock became battle fatigue, became operational exhaustion, became post-traumatic stress disorder. I watched this video maybe like 10 times, and every time I watched it, I would start crying. And I'm like, this probably means something.
Okay.
So I started watching comedy all the time, studying it, and it was only about like a couple months after that I'm like, I can't stay in this small town. I have to go somewhere to kind of pursue this.
Okay.
I have family out here. I grew up here, and it just made sense. Like I'm going to move back home, and I'm going to start really pursuing comedy as whatever I can do with it.
So okay, so when you decided to leave,
Mhm.
you had no connection to the comic scene out here.
No, not at all.
Okay.
I just
That
showed
was
up.
quite a big decision.
It's a relatively big decision. Like I had family out here, and I knew that there were places to do comedy out here, but I had no idea what the community was like. I just showed up. And actually, Sacramento it's really a fantastic place to start doing comedy. It's kind of like it's like the AAA baseball league of
Okay.
comedy. There's a lot of places to do it. Typically, really diverse audiences that are really sharp, really young,
Okay.
typically, and it's a good place to like cut your teeth, figure things out.
Okay, so how long have you been doing it here?
Just past 2 years.
Okay, sweet.
Yeah.
Now you said this was a great place to cut your teeth. Where would the next step be?
Next step would be moving, and this is kind of changing because the landscape of the way comedy works in the United States is actually differing now. But at this point in time, the next step would be after you are pretty good, after you have maybe opened for some like bigger name comics or done some bigger name shows. The next step would be moving to either New York or Los Angeles. Those are just
Okay, so the places that I would have guessed.
Exactly. And the difference between them is more or less academic. You go to New York if you really want to practice and become a really great comedian, or you go to Los Angeles if you want to like get on TV and rack up credits so you can do comedy in more places.
Okay, all right. So now you're saying it's not necessarily the necessary anymore. Is that because of the internet?
Yeah.
And because of things like that? Because
Yes.
there's so many ways for you to get noticed.
Absolutely, absolutely. We're at in terms of like the history of comedy, we're at a really transitional time because now it's gotten to a point where the people who control the gates that decide whether or not you can perform at this club or perform in this town, perform for this audience, they're losing power every day.
Okay.
just because it's easier for an artist to connect with their audience immediately. It used to be you needed those people in order to help you connect, but now a lot of that work you can do yourself.
Okay.
With the use of Twitter and Periscope and all those other types of things. So it's right now we're in the last. I feel like we're in the last like generation of comics who are going to be going to those major hubs.
Okay.
And after this, it's going to be totally homegrown type stuff.
Yeah, because you can do it like from your living room.
Absolutely. You can. Yeah, there's a lot of. That's actually funny you said that. There's a lot of great comedy shows. There's one here for a while, but in Los Angeles and New York that just take place in people's apartments.
Okay.
Broadcast.
And they just now are they like stand up or is it like
Stand
actual?
up.
It is stand up. They'll just sit there and
They'll set up a bunch of chairs and couches, and people will just show up.
oh,
and
like literally in their apartment.
in their apartment. It's really like the things you need to set up a comedy show are very minimal, and they're like great. And it's not just like, oh, this is just those weird guys on the block. Like big name comics go to shows like this to work on material or just to perform.
That is interesting.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. So then around town, do you have, aside from being here on Friday, the 31st, guys, it's this Friday, you should definitely go. Aside from being here on Friday, do you have some regular haunts that people can find you?
Yes, on Sundays and Mondays, I'm at the Sacramento Comedy Spot. They have their open mic there at 8.
Okay.
On Tuesdays, I go to Luna's Juice Bar and Cafe, which is on 16th and N.
Now, is that an open mic too?
That is an open mic as well. Wednesdays, I drive out to Davis to Sophia's Thai Kitchen. They have a live, a mixed open mic that does pretty much everything, mainly music, but the host, after some finagling, allows comics in a block at about 9:30, and we just do longer sets there.
They didn't want.
They didn't want it at first. They did not want to.
Well, what changed their mind?
I did.
Okay, all right. a little bit of persistence.
I was the only comic who showed up every week for a couple weeks, and I was like, listen, if I could get some more people, could we do some more? Can we have more comics? And he was like, totally.
He's like, all right, you bring the people, we'll get them down here.
Absolutely.
So, and you said that's Tuesday.
Yeah.
Okay. Where else do we?
So Wednesday, Sophia's, and then Thursday. There's no open mics really on Thursday, but Thursday there are two really good book shows. One is The Deep End, which is a show that's actually run by John Gamora, who's going to be here on Friday. His show takes place, and I'm not making this up, in a photo studio in an alleyway between 23rd and 24th Street and like S in Midtown Sacramento. And it's a really weird show. They have comics come from, I think this last week we had some people come in from New York to do shows, and it's a really good space for experimental comedy, for longer form stuff. And then there's another show at the Uli Theater that's at 27th and T in Midtown. And every like week they have a bunch of great comedians from San Francisco, from Los Angeles come through, and they put on a really good comedy showcase.
Okay, so but what about the weekends then?
The weekends are more or less dominated by, on Friday, Saturday, for the most entertainment you can get for live comedy, you would want to go to like the Punchline, Sacramento Punchline, or Laughs Unlimited. They're the two comedy clubs in town.
They pretty much take over the weekend.
Yeah, more or less. Sometimes local comics will get onto those shows to like open or host, things like that. Also, the Sacramento Comedy Spot on weekends, they have a lot of improv shows and sketch shows, and in the later hours, that's when they typically open up for comedy showcases or weirder types of comedic shows.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So then, where do you guys do or go on Friday nights?
Typically on Friday nights, we sit around and wonder why we didn't get booked that Friday.
Okay. Not this Friday, though.
Not this
Friday.
This
Friday, they'll be down here at Empire's Comics. Well, thank you for coming on, sir.
Thank you
Where
for having me.
can they find you online?
You can find me on Twitter at Bucky Gums. You can find me on Instagram at Bucky Gums. And you can find me on Facebook at JJL Comedy.
They're very consistent. And then, all right. You should just start up a Bucky Gums Facebook account.
I'm going to have to.
You will. I mean, it sounds real enough, right, guys?
Yeah.
Facebook's not going to shut him down. So, yeah, but look him up there. When you meet him in person, you can ask him about what Bucky Gums is all about.
Mm-hmm.
Evidently, it's a story.
It's a story. It's a long story.
Well, thank you for coming down, sir. And we will see you guys on Friday night, and I will see you then, too.
Absolutely.
Actually, I'll see you before then.
You will. See you then, guys.